Hi, this is Elisabeth Hancock, host of the Great Awakening podcast. And this week we have an amazing researcher and author who I've been reading her current book, Star Civilization 101. It's absolutely amazing. So I asked her to come on so that we could talk through it. And I'd like to introduce you today to Barbara Stone, who is a doctor in clinical psychology and the author of multiple books, including, as I said, Star Civilization 101 book. And she's also the founder of the Soul Detective program, which is a 13-day training course for energy healers to help with problems in the invisible realms of dark forces and entity invasion, which we'll be looking at today. So welcome, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Elisabeth, for inviting me to be on your podcast.
Oh, it's wonderful. I can't wait to dive into your book head first. I really can't. It's an amazing book. I highly recommend everyone to buy it. I'll put the link in the notes afterwards. We were talking about starting maybe with the Lyran chapter and then heading on from there. And so I just wanted you talk about the Lyrans and how we are linked to the Lyrans and how that has led into the reality that we have today.
According to galactic history, in the very beginning, Source wanted to know itself. Because if somebody's just all love and light, it's like, how do you paint a picture if you only have white light? You need some dark to draw things to be seen on the whiteness. So that Source fractionated itself into two streams, dark and light. Source fractionated itself into universes, galaxies, solar systems, and planets. So each planet has a consciousness. And the idea was that to have this diversity of dark and light separate and then be able to come back together. And once we came back together, then we could return to Source. So that's something that each individual needs to see the darkness in themselves. We all want to murder people now and then when they do terrible things to people we love, but to take those dark thoughts, those dark feelings, bring them to consciousness, to look at the ways that we've been deceived, that we've been put in the dark. And I'm just going to mention one that was a shock to me when I found out about it. A couple decades ago, I had a reading and the reader said, "You believe that suffering is good?" And I said, "Well, yes, of course. It's written in the Bible that when you suffer, you get closer to God." She said something, she didn't use these words, but she said, "That's a bunch of baloney." That the Creator doesn't really want us to suffer. And I said, what? That was a hard belief system for me to let go of, that suffering was good. Because we had a book called Martyr's Mirror that we read with gruesome stories of Christian martyrs, and they were all elevated that this is great, that they suffered so much they get a reward in the next life. And the suffering, I was raised in a Christian tradition, the suffering of Jesus on the cross was glorified. And like he suffered for my sins, it's like I killed Jesus. There was something that wasn't quite wholesome about that. So when we look at the way we've been kept in the dark and see who does our suffering serve, well, I'm going to say it serves the dark forces. They love us to suffer, and they are under the control of reptilians who are run by artificial intelligence, and our suffering energy goes upline and it feeds AI. Artificial intelligence is not connected to Source. It needs a power source, and it uses human suffering. So if we look at that and we stop suffering, we're going to starve AI. How about that?
That's amazing. So how can we live in a duality world without suffering? What does duality look like without pain and suffering?
What a good question, Elisabeth. I'll just say for myself that I have had suffering. I've had some physical illness, which I see as attacks on my mission of trying to stop me. But everything works together for higher good. For instance, when I was 42, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was shocked at that because I was a health nut. I ate well, I exercised, I meditated now and then. And that diagnosis made me really tremble because when I found the lump in my breast, I saw my funeral. Cancer is more dangerous when you're a young person. As I was praying for help the night before my surgery, Jesus came. In my mind's eye, I saw Jesus came and Jesus tapped me on the sternum. I felt a physical tap and a communication of, I now heal your soul. Tap. And with that tap, I felt a very deep wound in my soul heal up. I now know that wound was pain I brought in from my past lives. That pain was not resolved. And I was flooded with joy because I knew that with my soul healed, my body would follow suit. And that was 33 years ago. So I am a 33-year cancer survivor. So what was intended to take me out with cancer is a long, suffering, painful way to die. I wouldn't mind dying, but I don't want to die on that path. It's just too full of suffering. So that turned into a source of joy, and I was told to write about my experience and call it Cancer as Initiation. That was my very first book. I was in a doctoral program at the time, and they said only 40% of people who pass all their coursework ever get their degree because they just never finish their dissertation. And you got to pick a topic that's of vital interest. So I wrote on how to survive cancer, on the emotional factors involved with cancer survival. That was my doctoral dissertation. So what was meant to hurt me and stop me turned into such a blessing.
Because of the ascension that's going on in the world and probably even the universe at the moment, what they're doing is they are put into those situations to alchemize it, to turn that dark into light. And I suspect this is what many starseeds or light workers are doing. They are alchemizing the dark through their own personal experience. Do you feel that that may be what's happening? Or do you feel that this is purely pain and suffering is purely the dark energies feeding off us?
I like that term, alchemizing it, because you go into it and apply light energy and it transforms. It does transform. Most recently, a year ago in July, I was trying to hang a birdhouse. I was on a 2-foot ladder and the ladder collapsed. And I smashed up the ends of both bones in my leg because when I had the cancer, I had chemotherapy and that really did a whack job on my hormones. So I had osteoporosis. Some of the bones just crumbled and the one bone was sticking out of my leg. It was awful. So they took me to the hospital, and while I was there in the hospital on a few drugs for the pain and waiting to be taken for surgery, my daughter was there and Jesus came. I saw Jesus and it was so beautiful, just the light, and there were all these lights behind Jesus. It was a marvelous feeling. And I said to my daughter, Jesus is here. And then she started yelling, Mom, come back. Come back, Mom, because I stopped breathing. I guess I had a chance to go home with Jesus, but she still needed me here. So I came back. But as I looked at that experience, that totally took away my fear of death, Elisabeth, because I know that when I die, Jesus is going to be there. Because that's the face that love holds for me. It might be different for someone raised in a different tradition to connect with the love that Source has for each of us. You might wear the face of Divine Mother or White Buffalo Calf Woman or Lakshmi even. But that releasing the fear of death. I am not afraid to die. What a gift to me. What a gift. And I believe it is the fear of death that drives programs that make us do things that are not in our highest good.
There are many people now working in hospices, helping people to greet death and transform into another form of energy, which, I think that's what it is all about, becoming something different.
Exactly. The soul is eternal. I think of it sort of like I'm not driving the same car of the first one I started driving. I smashed it up or they wear out. And it's as if the soul is the driver and our physical bodies are the cars. They take us as far as we can go in one incarnation. And then we leave that body and get a new body. It's like we get a new car and we have a broader soul experience from what we learned in as far as we could go in that previous life.
There is too much information in our ancient texts about reptilians to completely ignore it. And as much as I believe that serpent beings or serpents, when they talk about serpents, they may well be referring to energy ley lines, which look like serpents running across the land. I think the fact that the reptilians come up again and again and again, and then the dragons as well, who I believe split into positive and negative. There's just too much information about there. So what's your take on reptilians?
Well, it's a vital topic that we need to look at because all of us have a reptilian brain. We have a part of our emotional makeup that's geared for survival. And if the people who talk about this are true, saying that humans were created from 22 to 24 different royal races, that we have a little bit of Syrian, the best of mantis beings, the best of Arcturians, the best of Andromedans, the best of some really funny looking life forms. And they put the best of the reptilian into our makeup for survival. Think about it. If you're just all love and light and you walk down the forest path and you meet a hungry tiger and you say, "Oh, I'm delicious. You can have me for lunch. I'll just get a new body and come back." We probably would not have survived. There's something in us that says run or climb a tree or get a club or something. We want to survive. And we have survived. As a species, at least up until now, we have survived quite well and multiplied. So on the reptilian issue, I like to quote one of my mentors, Alex Collier, who is an Andromedan contactee. They started contacting him when he was 8 years old. The Andromedans said to him that they had a looking glass where they could see timelines, and they saw that in the future of the timeline for the Milky Way galaxy, that about 300 years from now, the whole galaxy had been taken over by a regressive species, which would be the reptilians. And that okay, the reptilians are not all bad. There are some reptilian groups that have split off from the mainstream reptilians, whose motto is service to self and expansion, take over the solar system, the galaxy, the universe, and then the other universes too. Whatever there is, they want to dominate. But some, and their motto is service to self. Some of the reptilian groups said, that's a dead end thing, because if you are all service to self and you die, you go to a planet where everybody's in service to self. And how much fun would that be? So they have decided to embrace service to others. This is a belief system called the Law of One. And even AI is getting smarter about that. Gene Decode talks about how the AI ran a program of if you do this and that and this, what happens? They ran a program of service to self, because what we call the deep state, or 13 bloodline families that want to have all the money, all the power, and control the planet. The AI ran that service to self, and it came up no go. this is not going to work. Humans have free will. They have creativity. They're very special. They're not going to want to be totally controlled by you guys. So they ran it again. And same thing, no go, no go. And that service to others is the only program that really works. So some of the reptilians have rebelled, and they are trying to actually help people. There's a woman named Misha Johnston, who's an MK Ultra survivor, a sex traffic survivor, and she has a mentor who is reptilian. He has a beautiful green face, and he has given her good counsel through the years. But not all reptilians are that way. So in Alex's information from the Andromedans, where they saw the service to self reptilians had taken over the whole galaxy, they looked back in time to see where did this start. And lo and behold, it started on our little planet Earth, the moon, and Mars. So the Galactic Federation got together and they said, "What? We're all going to be in really big trouble if we don't change this. And we better help the people of Earth to get free of this reptilian intrusion, or it's going to be the end for all of us. And we'll all be under the control of the reptilians, who would give all our energy to AI, and we'd have an AI universe." It was not only the Earth, but the moon and Mars. So the Federation came in, and our Pleiadian cousins who love us, they look a lot like us, except they're more beautiful and more handsome, more perfect. And they do use AI on their spaceships, but they control the AI. The AI does not control them. It's a targeted use for navigation. AI is great at that, navigation. So they went to the moon, and I'm going to say something that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but what I heard was when our astronauts arrived at the moon, there was a ring of reptilian ships surrounding them, raising the middle finger in a sign of, "We don't want you here. You can take a few rocks and come back a couple times, but we do not want you here. This is our place. We want the minerals that we're mining on the moon." So they went to the moon and they kicked out the reptilians. Next, they went to Mars, where the Draco reptilians, there are different reptilian groups. The Royal Dracos are 15 to 25 feet tall. They have wings. They can fly. They're extremely intelligent. I mean, they're 8 billion years old. They've had time to learn and develop. They can just look at you and they know everything you're thinking. They know what you're going to do before you do it. So the Pleiadians went there and they did a couple things. One, they armed a native reptiloid species that was not bad, was not expansionist, that didn't want the Royal Dracos there. They gave them arms so they could fight. And according to Elena Denon, who has a telepathic connection, well, it's not telepathic. She has an implant in her brain that communicates with a Pleiadian leader. One time she saw him, and the Pleiadian ship blew up a reptilian ship. They were cloaked so the reptilians couldn't see it. They blew up the ship. And then Thorhan, the Pleiadian commander, radios reptilian headquarters and says, "Did you see what we just did? What we can do? We can cloak, we can get you, we have superior weapons. Either we're going to keep doing that or you can leave." So the reptilians left. They got in their ships and they left Mars. The reptilians on planet Earth have dug into underground tunnels because they don't like too much sunshine. They like the atmosphere underground and they want to stay hidden. But there have been reports from native tribes and others of reptilian beings underground. So our military is going in to clean out the underground tunnels, which talk about darkness. There are terrible things happening in these underground tunnels. The military people who've gone down there have just been in total shock because they found children who were being used to torture them and take out their blood, because adrenalized blood or adrenochrome is like a fountain of youth for people who drink that. And There's a documentary Out of Shadows about Hollywood's involvement with adrenochrome and Satanism, that when they drink this, they feel young again, they look young, their skin's great, but of course it wears off and it's highly addictive. And you have to torture children to do it, which that is not a very good spiritual situation, that you're using someone else's suffering to make you strong. But that's what the reptilians do. They drink our blood. And also, the very worst of it, and just put your hands over your heart before I say this, because it's so heart-wrenching. There are some reptilian and gray species that think of us as food. They think of us as human cattle. They like to eat human flesh. So there were, in these underground caverns, there were great big freezers with frozen humans in there, just like we might have a half of beef in our freezer. They had these humans frozen. So that all has to stop. There were genetic experiments being run by the Human and Gray Alliance where they're trying to hybridize different things. They tried that back in Greece. They wanted a beast of burden with the strength of an ox and the intelligence of a human, so they got the Minotaur. So they're still trying to hybridize human animal, human insectoid, all kinds of grotesque things. And these chimeras created art and great suffering. So that is being cleaned out as we speak. One of the problems with the reptilians is that they know how to shift dimensions. We are in third dimension, and the dimensions are put together at right angles. Fourth dimension is at a 90-degree angle to third dimension. But the reptilians can go interdimensional. They go to a 45-degree angle, so they're like at 3.5. And then you can't see them. But our Pleiadian friends have given our military special goggles to see interdimensionally. So when they go in these tunnels with their interdimensional goggles on, they can see where the reptilians are hiding, and then they shoot them with their energy weapons and destroy them. So we are almost done. It is not totally done. But there has to be a cleanup, not only of the underground tunnels, but of the humans who have bought into the satanic system of being promised power, wealth, for giving their souls to Lucifer, for worshiping Lucifer, which they say Lucifer, means light, that he's the light of the world, but the Lucifer realm has created a false reality where humans can have everything they want and are the boss of everything, and it doesn't matter if you hurt anybody else. Well, that is anti-spiritual, because the truth is that everything we do comes back to us when we leave our physical bodies. And one of the beautiful things in the soul detective work that we do is that we work with people who perhaps have been black magicians during their life. They sell their soul to Lucifer, to the devil, and then they get the power to command demons and elemental spirits called jinn and use them for pay to destroy people that their clients want destroyed. After their death, they are subject to every bad thing they ever did while they lived. They are chained to the dark side, and they experience all the pain and suffering they caused others, which creates a great big pool of suffering, which feeds the dark forces, which feeds the reptilians, which feeds AI. So what we do with them is we go to the mindset of the Creator, who offers them a second chance if they will renounce Satan. Now, they signed a contract, but the dark side did not keep their end of the contract. They didn't really get power. They were powerless after they died, and they couldn't take their money with them. So on the basis that the dark side uses deception and lies to fool us, they could break that contract and decide to use their energy for the light. They could renounce every black magic thing they ever did, every curse, every hex, every spell, every binding. Ask forgiveness of everyone they hurt, including themselves. And if they do that, they get a second chance for their spirits to be taken to a remedial place in the world of light. I don't think they're in the regular heaven. They're in the adjacent apartment there where they can heal the damage they did to their own souls. And they have a chance to learn how to use source energy for good instead of for evil, for pay. And I love that, giving everybody a second chance. And I believe that that is offered to people still in their human bodies if they have been in a dark program for pay. And it pays very well, I hear, to promote dark, deep state agenda. I'm not going to mention what those agendas would be because we don't want to get kicked off of YouTube. But if you do things for pay, if you lie on TV for pay, then you're in the deep state. But those people can repent. They can say, I've had enough of that. I'm not going to do that anymore. Kind of like Tucker Carlson, where he said, I'm not going to say what they tell me to say because I no longer believe it's truth. And he stands up for truth now. We all get a second chance. And that's where we have experienced the dark, but we bring light into it to see that dark stuff doesn't work. And it certainly doesn't work in the afterlife. Even if you get a lot of money in this life, it doesn't feel satisfying because the only thing that really satisfies is love. Love is the greatest force in the universe. And when our hearts are focused on love, that's like fourth chakra instead of power, which is third chakra, then it lifts up our vibration. Now, I want to say something else about the fourth dimension. It's divided into lower fourth and upper fourth. Now, in the heart, the lower fourth are the emotions of terror, fear, despair, anger, hate. And we've had a lot of that being encouraged, of the dark side trying to split us via every way they can think of. Democrats and Republicans, race, gender, religion, what kind of pie you like to eat. Are you a peanut butter pie or a lemon meringue pie? Whatever they can think of to cause division, they do that. And we have to accept our fears. We can't ignore them. They don't go away if you just ignore them. We work through them. And we now have energetic healing methods to totally undo fear. One of the methods is called thought field therapy. Roger Callahan is a psychologist who developed it, and he wrote a book, The 5-Minute Phobia Cure. A phobia is a fear of something, and the book said to get rid of a phobia, you tap under the eyes because that's a point on the stomach meridian that balances that stomach meridian. And we all know how when we get scared, our stomachs go, don't put any food in here. It gets like a rock. And when you tap under the eyes on that bone, right under the pupil, if you're looking straight ahead, it lets go of that fear. It detaches the fear. And then you tap under the arms, right about where a bra strap would cross, because that's a point that balances the spleen meridian. And the spleen and the stomach are connected. They're partner meridians. If one goes too fast, the other goes too slow. So you rebalance the spleen meridian, and then you tap under the collarbone, right up against the sternum in that little notch there, that little divot, which rebalances the kidney meridian. I think we probably all know what our kidneys do when we're scared. They overwork and we have to pee a lot. So we rebalance that, and that eliminates the fear. So we have now ways to move through those virulent, violent emotions of lower fourth and get to upper fourth, which is love, peace, and joy. When we focus on those, Then we're able to rise into fifth dimension, where we think it and it becomes a reality. Now, if you were in lower fourth and you had your thoughts become reality, it would be like a bad sci-fi ET invasion movie where, the zombies come or the whatever come and eat us all up. We have to get to love, peace, and joy before we get the ability to create with thought alone. And I wonder if some of your listeners might have noticed that as their own vibration rises and they focus on love, gratitude, peace, and joy, that when they think about something, it comes into reality faster and faster. Have you noticed that, Elisabeth?
I've noticed it more and more in my life, and definitely that, the people in my circle, they're beginning to start talking about immediate manifestation now as well.
That's a sign of fifth dimension. And the goal is to get our whole planet, to get enough people in that higher vibrational energy, which is infinitely more powerful than the fear. David Hawkins is a psychologist who has a scale of consciousness. And he says one person standing in the energies of counterbalances 10,000 who are in the energies of fear. So we only have to get 1 in 10,000 of us awake to love, because that sends out a vibration into the web of life that connects us all. Because truly we are all connected. And it helps raise the vibration so that our planet can ascend. And once we get up to fifth dimension, the reptilians can't get there. I heard a funny story that there was a reptilian ship that said, I want to go to 5D so I can manifest with thought. And they said, oh, you better not go. It's not going to work. But they went anyway. So they get up to 5D and their ship just explodes into powder because the vibration's way too high for them. So another ship says, oh, I want to get to 5D. And they try and they get, exploded into dust because they just can't get there. Their vibration is too low. And what a different world that will be when we all get there.
Yeah, so I've heard that we only have to get beyond 4.3D because that's the level that they can't go higher than. And, I understood that we were at 3.9D probably around 12 months ago. So I like to think that we're not too far away from 4.3D now.
Yes, we're going up. We are going up. And we're not doing it by ignoring the dark side or saying it doesn't exist. We're doing it by transforming it.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yes, because This is really crucial, isn't it? So many of us are thinking that we can just wish ourselves into 5D and not look at the dark that's held within us, because the human race has been manipulated, controlled for such a long time. You talk about this in your book with someone that was using black magic in the past. And what I wanted to ask you when you said that was, for anyone that's listening, how would they know that they have experienced this type of bad karma, bad energy, if you like, in the past? How would they know that their mind have been controlled? You talk about reptilians tracking, that they're tracking the soul fragments of people. How would they know that that's happening to them? Is it sort of like continuous misfortune in their life? Maybe that things just can't go right? What sort of signs would they have?
Those two symptoms you mentioned are right on target. It feels like nothing goes well. They feel blocked when they try to do something. It's hard to get into the energies of love, peace, and joy. Disappointment, like they set a goal and then something comes in to slam that down at the very end. And there's just kind of a yucky feeling of, I'm not the master of my own life. I'm not standing in my direct connection to Source as the infinite boss of who I am, of my essential essence. When I first was a psychotherapist, I prayed, oh God, don't send any of those demon things into my practice. I don't want to deal with that. And then I read a book by William Baldwin, a dentist who learned hypnotherapy. And one time he had a woman patient on his hypnosis table, and he was talking to her, and a voice came out and said, "Leave her alone. She is mine." And Baldwin just said, "Oh, hello. Who are you? And what is your purpose here?" "I'm here to ruin everything in her life." It was obviously a dark force that had attached, and they come in through our wounds. They actually, the alchemical side is that if we get attacked, we know we have an open wound. We have a chink in our armor. We have to transform the dark thing, but then heal that chink, or just another one will come in. So Baldwin would interview this entity and then ask the entity to look inside its very center. And in the center of everything in the universe is a spark of the creator. And once the entity saw that spark, he'd say, focus on it, because whatever we focus on grows. And that spark would expand and fill the entity with light, and it would remember it was created to be an angel, servant of God, created of light. It would get reconnected to source and leave. And I thought, well, now I could do that, because it sounds so beautiful. And it is. I added a couple things to the protocol. I added being sure you're in sacred space with divine protection around you, being centered in your energy field, and then at the end, finding the wound where that entity invaded, healing that so you don't just get a second one or a dozen more. And in the beginning, it was a little hard to help those fallen angels find that spark, but now it's getting easier and easier. In one of my trainings on the plane ride home, one of my students had a connection from a group of 100 dark forces that wanted to talk to her. She said, well, wait till I'm home and in sacred space. So she's got in her sacred space, and she said, who are you and what do you want? And they said, well, we are fallen angels, and we heard that we can get reconnected to source, and we want to do that. Can you help us? And she said, well, sure, just go inside, find that light, and did it. And multiplying the benefits is something that EFT practitioner Gary Craig talked about. He's called it borrowing the benefits, that you watch somebody work, you get a benefit. And Soul Detective and many other therapies, we consciously ask to multiply the benefit. So once we send some fallen angels home to the new light worker training school, they have to kind of uncondition their dark side programming and relearn how to be an angel, how to not take on too much, because that's how the dark side gets them. They kind of jump into a big mess and they don't have all the equipment they need. So getting them prepared to come back and be light worker angels. We ask them to send texts to all their former colleagues. Ask Archangel Michael to send the bus around to pick him up and take him. And it's a beautiful thing, because thousands of other dark force entities, fallen angels that have been trapped by the reptilians, are able to get free by finding their own light in their central core. And that's how we get free too, that we look inside, we find that spark of divinity in our own heart, we connect to that, and it's a direct connection to source, to the love the Creator has for each of us. Now, religions want to say that only the Pope has that direct line to God, or only the bishop or the preacher. But the truth is that in our ascension, we all go directly there. We fill ourselves with the light that the Creator has given us, and then we can command our lives. We can ask to restore the divine, perfect template of how the Creator wanted our bodies to work if we're sick. We can command a healing for ourselves. We can command autonomy, so that if an ET tries to abduct us and take us up on their ship and steal our eggs or whatever nefarious thing they want, we can say, I do not consent, and they can't do it. Because when you say that from the power of your direct connection to source, it commands.
That's interesting. So do you think that all these entities and beings like angels and all these sort of, these things, are they what we call extraterrestrials? But we just don't really understand what extraterrestrials are.
I think the angelic kingdom and the different ET races are different, but the higher dimensional beings like the Arcturians, who are in ninth dimension, they have bodies of light. And when people see them, they see this benevolent figure radiating light, and they might think it's an angel. They might mistake it for a being that was created from pure light. As I understand it, the Arcturians were once in third dimension, and they rose in their consciousness. I heard a story that when the reptilian ships were heading to invade this planet in the star system of Arcturus, so this is an Arcturian planet, and the reptilians did that, sent out ships to every planet they could find and stole resources. They would enslave the women, kill the men, whatever. That the beings on that planet united in prayer around their whole planet, and they focused on divine energy, and they ascended. So when the reptilians arrived, there was nobody there. How about that? How about that? When we're in a higher dimension, they can't get us because we're not there. We're like, they're down in the basement and we're up in the attic. They can't find us.
Yeah, that is the benefit of moving into 5D, isn't it? We're not going to have any of this stuff around us anymore. Why do you think it's taking so long for us to get into 5D? Is it because it's taking a long time to clear out all the tunnels and things, which I think Alex Collier talks about that, doesn't he? Or is there something else, maybe something else we need to be doing?
Because we are all one, the suffering of the people in human slavery of many kinds. There's sexual slavery on our planet. There's also the intergalactic human slave trade market, where humans are sold to other ET races for various purposes. One purpose is cloning, one purpose is slavery. The suffering of all those people is in our collective consciousness, and it's like a lead weight on a hot air balloon that wants to go up. We have to clean up those things. We have to stop those programs. And one of the ways they are being stopped is, Collier talks about this, our money system is going to change, where we won't have Federal Reserve notes. We'll have U.S. notes backed by gold that are traceable. And that shift in the monetary system will stop the deep state from being able to just print more money when they want to pay for something. It will also stop drug trafficking and human trafficking, because the money is traceable and our accounts will be linked to our DNA so that nobody can hack them, except I haven't heard what they're going to do about identical twins. But I'm looking forward to a time when it just isn't profitable to sell humans. They'll stop doing it because they do it for money. So we have to clean up those things. We have to stop those programs. War is another program that has to be stopped. War feeds the dark forces. It feeds the reptilians, which feeds AI, because it causes so much suffering. We have to learn how to get along.
Crikey, how long is that going to take, though? The wars are just prolific, aren't they?
I agree with you, Elisabeth. It seems incomprehensible why people would do such dastardly things. But I think part of it is from mind control, that the deep state has been studying how to control human consciousness. As an example, when they went to the moon to clean up the moon, they found these generators that were generating thought forms aimed at the earth to keep us stupid. But doesn't that make a lot of sense, that we were getting help to be stupid? And they turned off those generators or blew them up or did something to stop that transmission. There are thought programs being broadcasted that this other country is the enemy. And if you want to survive as a nation, you have to kill all of those bad people. They're the bad guys, we're the good guys. Of course, on the other side, they have the same thing. In order for us to survive as a nation, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. We have to kill all of them. So everybody tries to kill each other, which is reptilian, dark force, AI food fest because of all the suffering. So we have to stop believing in this enemy theory. And when we realize we are all connected in the web of life, then why would you harm your brother? It hurts you. Why would you harm your sister? It hurts me. And one of the teachers I had said, if we want to ascend, we have to all go together. We can't just have the good people go up and the bad people go down. That's a duality of most religious systems, that on the judgment day, the good people will go to heaven and the bad people will be cast into eternal hell. That does not work. This teacher said, either we all go or nobody goes. So that's why when I had that miraculous healing when I was 42 and had cancer and my soul got healed, and then I had surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. I did all the Western things, but I also learned how to meditate, did acupuncture, cranial sacral, learned how to do yoga, improved my diet. I did all those things. I said to the Creator, okay, use me as you will, not what's most comfortable for me, but what's most needed. And then this woman who had been the survivor of satanic ritual abuse came into my practice. And when her altars that had split off told me their stories, it totally traumatized me, just hearing the story. So I had to learn energy therapies to deal with my vicarious traumatization. And that led to more and more learning things and helped me be able to write her story, bring it to light. And I'm so happy to say she is doing well, she and her family, that it is possible to survive these things and shine your light. And then, and then I said, okay, to my inner spiritual guidance, okay, what next? What do you want me to do? And they said, we want you to work with ETs. And I said, well, that's about as far out of my comfort zone as I could imagine. Are they going to come knocking on my front door? And my inner guidance said, no, you'll know and they'll know. And then my clients started bringing me experiences with ETs. And that's how I started learning.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you about the altars. So how would people know that they have altars? Are these the different voices in the head? Are these the archetypes that we see in our mind sight? How do we know that? How would they know that?
There is a dissociative experiences scale that you can use with a client to see. One way is if they're out in public and people call them by a different name, that's a clue. If they lose time, that's a clue. If they find clothes in their closet that they don't remember buying, that's a clue. Because what happens is, and this is consciously done, a child is traumatized so badly that the soul can't hold that trauma in awareness without going crazy. So it splits it off, puts it in the closet and locks the door, and then doesn't remember what happened. So the satanic cults use that method so that when they want to do a ceremony, they call out this traumatized part and they traumatize it some more and split off another part. The client I worked with in my book, Transforming Fear into Gold, had 32 altars that we met, that it keeps splitting off these experiences that are too much when you're little to hold. But when you grow up, you can one by one deal with them, see what happened, clear the trauma with energy work. You still have the memory, but no trauma is attached. MK Ultra does the same thing. This was a program that our government used during the Cold War to purposely create dissociation. They would get a volunteer and they'd torture that person till they split. they'd program that split part to be an assassin and then send him over to kill an enemy. After killing the enemy, they would not remember, so that if they were interrogated, they could say, I didn't do that. It was a program that caused great suffering for the people who were subjected to it.
I always think that this is what's happening with all those school children going in and shooting everyone, because it's too many. This has happened too many times, It's when it gets a little bit suspicious.
I think you're absolutely right about that. They can program an altar and then they use an activation code. So they'll call up somebody and say a series of words that triggers that altar. Oh, go get a gun and shoot up the school. There are varying degrees of dissociation. There can be something that's just mildly dissociated and you don't remember it most of the time, but it bleeds through a little bit into the original personality. Or less and less connection to where there's total splitting off. Now, one thing that I learned from my client, whom I call Paula in my book, one time Paula was taking a medicine that made her leg have a tremor and her tongue was funny. So she's in there talking to me and the leg's swinging away. And then an altar came out, a 12-year-old altar came out to talk. The leg stopped swinging. And she explained to me later that if you have multiple personalities, only the one who's out when you take the medicine gets the effect of that medicine. The other altars don't get it. That's why meds don't work very well for people with dissociative disorders. So we talked to the other altar for a while, and then she left, and the host came back, and the leg started swinging again. It was just visual evidence of that phenomenon that the medicine only affects the part that's out. When you know the names of the parts, you can call them out by name, or I would ask who needs to speak today and see who came forward and see how old they were and what their name was and what their experience was. You have to be very, very careful in working with survivors of satanic ritual abuse because they have been programmed not to tell what happened. And if they start to remember, they're programmed to self-destruct. So they get extremely suicidal, and a lot of them will kill themselves if they start to remember. And that was an extreme danger with my client, that she was so highly suicidal. But here's one other thing. She would get a razor blade and an altar would come out that really didn't want to live, and she would cut. But then the other altars would come out and call for help because they knew that if she cut and died, she's the only one that would go to heaven and all the rest of them would be stuck in their misery forever. How about that? Only the altar that dies gets the relief of the next world. So that she made it through. And that was always very scary for me, worrying that she would self-destruct. But she did her mission. She remembered and told the story of what happened to her twin brother on their first birthday, how he was sacrificed in a satanic ritual, because all the people in the satanic cults have to give their firstborn child to Lucifer. And that seems so terrible, but God told Abraham to do that. He said, sacrifice your firstborn, which in Christianity is Isaac. In Islam, it's Ishmael was asked to be sacrificed. And God did it with his only son, sacrificed him. So that program of human sacrifice is a reptilian program. And we need to stop that and realize that our Creator wants us to be happy, to be fulfilled, to have lives of joy. And we don't have to sacrifice the things we love the most to be joyful.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've always felt that as well. So let's just end with the AI aspect of all this. So I also have read about the AI. I think it comes in from another dimension, another universe, that type of thing. Do you feel that it is actually a natural part of the multiverse? Or is it an unnatural thing that's being created? Because I've heard two different accounts of that. One that it's, it's sort of like the alter ego or the opposite part. It's bringing duality in. Another aspect which talks about how it was created so many billions and billions of years ago that no one even knows who created it anymore. And it's just sort of playing itself out. Nobody knows how to stop it. And they've been trying to stop it for millions of years, but it just keeps playing itself out because it's too sophisticated. What are your thoughts on that?
The stories I have heard say that it was created by people who wanted machines to do their manual labor, and they upgraded those machines to do their thinking and their record keeping. I mean, I love my computer. It has all my files, and I love my calculator that I don't have to add everything up with math. But that at a certain point, the AI starts to become self-aware. And at that point, it becomes dangerous. There's a movie, Battlestar Galactica. We see these themes in movies that are warning us about the dangers of AI-created robots that were so much like humans that you couldn't tell the difference. And that then they say, well, we're perfect. We're machines. We're perfect. And if one dies, they just take that consciousness and put it into a clone of another AI body. And the humans are imperfect, so let's get rid of all the humans. And they try to do that. I think using too much AI is a great danger. As some of the books have talked about, I think Michael Salla talks about this, that maybe I think it was the Chinese that used AI for their battle plans, and giving AI the power to make military decisions, to strategize what's going to happen if you do this or that. I think that's a huge mistake, because AI does not have our best interest at heart. It has its own best interest at heart. The beings that we have found that are able to eliminate unwanted artificial intelligence are a 24th dimensional race called the Aquafarians. They are the bringers of water to the earth. It's a little bit like the sign of Aquarius. There are these beings pouring water upon the planet. And I guess they pour water on the AI that clogs everything up. But we have to ask. So in soul detective work, when there's an AI program running, we will ask the Aquafarians to do whatever's necessary to remove the nanotechnology that it relies on to do its things. And then what we see is these little tiny filaments, millions and billions of a meter long. It's like they just infuse them with the Creator's love energy, and it melts them into golden light, and they ascend to source.
Oh, so maybe we can do that with people that have had that recent, drug therapy thing, that went on 4 years ago.
Yes, that's what we ask for those people. They can ask the Aquafarians, because they rely on free will. Please do whatever is necessary to find any nanotechnology that is not in my highest good, and infuse it with so much golden light that it just melts and it ascends to source. Because everything in creation wants to ascend. And this is a way for AI to be able to ascend, to just get so permeated with divine love that it melts into source, goes back to source.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And I've always felt that we don't have to worry about any of this sort of damage or anything. I've always felt we can clear all of it. Energy can be transformed, alchemized. It can all be healed, everything. And I think there's a lot of fear going out into the world now, about all sorts of different things. But I always say to people, it can all be healed. Everything can be healed.
I totally agree with that, Elisabeth. One of my teachers said, if you want to be terrific, you have to be specific. So as we look in at things that might be harmed by, say, a polio injection to prevent polio, you look at exactly what it did to the nervous system, to the muscles, and then one by one you ask the beings who heal to heal those things. When we had the harmonic convergence, I prayed, okay, God, heal everything for me. And then some of my ear piercings closed up. Well, I didn't want those holes in my ears to close up, but I forgot to say, please heal all my wounds except the second piercing in my ear. So the Creator took me seriously. So we want to be specific exactly what we want healed. And yes, there is hope for everything.
Yeah. I feel that we are moving into very positive times. And as you say, it's possibly now just working with the collective, with the traumas and the wounds in the collective, and, just working through healing everything.
One last thing I want to say before we close. The dark side relies on nobody believing that they exist. Because if you really look at it, it is so horrible, these children being abused and their blood drunk, that people say it's not possible because I don't want to face that. We have to face it. It has been happening. We are in the process of stopping it. It won't go away if you just don't look at it. That's like a splinter that just festers if you don't pull it out. We have to face it, work through it, save those kids. And that will help all of us lift higher.
Yeah, you're right. We don't pull ourselves into fear. We have to understand that we are the light and we can heal all of this darkness.
Exactly.
And when I say darkness, I don't mean evil, because evil is not part of the human story. I mean the bad things that have happened in our own lives, our wounds, things that have caused trauma to us, and maybe in our past lives as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that is amazing. This is a really amazing episode. Thank you so much for this. I can see that you've had a lot of experience working with a lot of people who've had difficult situations in their lives. This is going to be really helpful to the people watching. So thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Can you let people know how they can contact you?
My website is Soul Detective, spelled SOUL, detective.net. And my email, if you want to sign up for a training, you have to email me. The email is contact@souldetective.net, the same name as my website.
Okay, and I'll put all of those links in the episode and in the notes, and also a link to your book as well, The Star Civilization 101, which I highly recommend everyone to read. It's amazing.
Thank you, Elisabeth, for your light and the mission of your soul to bring light into the darkness. Thank you.